When we think about body composition, there's a number of different ways to take body composition. And first of all, what is body composition? Well, it's the difference between essentially lean muscle and body fat. Certainly people are interested in that number, and it could play a big role in terms of the overall endpoint performance if someone has more body fat than muscle, or vice versa. When I was working with a professional football team, that was a big factor in terms of a lot of those athletes. The linemen certainly had higher levels of body fat than the wide receivers, for example. And there was a bod pod in the area that our athletes would go to regularly to make sure that they were monitoring their body fat and body composition to make sure that they would be able to play at their peak. So when we think about, and I mentioned the bod pod, when we think about the different ways to monitor body composition, DEXA and bod pod are really kind of the gold standards right now. Now, great, they're very highly accurate. They're again, the gold standards. One of the downsides to both of them is that they're extremely expensive and not the most practical. So if you work in a university setting, potentially you have them, or a pro setting. Some pro teams certainly have them in their locker rooms. I know at least several football teams do. I know in a collegiate setting, several do. And several companies that I work with also have bod pods that are used regularly. Very, very accurate. Again, about a 1 to 3% error margin with those. Again, not the most practical. The DEXA, also fantastic. I use that in my master's research. But again, at about $250,000 per unit, most gyms aren't going to have these. In terms of what's more practical, skin fold calipers certainly, and bioelectrical impedance, the last two that are highlighted. Again, skin fold calipers, they're affordable, they're quick, and they can be reliable to a point, but the body fat distribution definitely varies. Males typically carry more weight around their midsection, females around their lower bodies. So accuracy is also dependent on the tester themselves and the calipers, the quality of the caliper. So there's some limitations. Same thing with BIA. Now, the two of these, what I usually tell people is use them, if this is what you have access to, use it as a tracking tool, and not necessarily that you're making sure that you're using it as the exact number, whatever it gives you. But if you do it month after month, you can see the trend is what you're looking for calipers or BIA. And that's what's important. If the trend is going in the right direction, while the number might not be exactly accurate, you're getting a general idea of where body composition is. So for all of these. Now, again, there's other ways to do it, but these are probably the most common measures of body composition. In terms of just general anthropometrics, that term that's often thrown around and used in the research world and with athletes, we can look at body weight, getting away from body composition. Of course, it's an easy tracking tool, but it certainly doesn't distinguish between body fat and lean body mass. You're training athletes, you're building muscle, you're at least maintaining muscle. We want to make sure we differentiate between the two. And there's one example I'd like to share here. When we talk about body weight, it's an okay tool, again, when we're looking at trends, but there's an athlete who I worked with, and you probably have the same exact story. She was a rower, and day one, we were taking everybody's body weight. She was 150 pounds. 8 weeks later, as we were training, we were working on her nutrition and everything else. 8 weeks later, she stepped on the scale. She was 152 pounds. Now, if she was solely looking at the scale as a measure of progress, she probably wouldn't be too happy with that number. She's gone up 2 pounds after been training. She was actually trying to lose body fat was the goal, and her coaches wanted to, or we wanted her to do that for her overall performance, but she gained 2 pounds. However, we're also tracking her body composition. And what we noticed over that 8 weeks is that it went down. So again, body weight's okay, but it's one piece to the puzzle.